Welcome to Merchman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, we share tools you can utilize when it comes to wet weather and delayed planting. How does planting depth affect growth of the plant? And here a market update from Turk.
Hi, this is Joe Merchman. Welcome to Merchman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Lynn, and Turk. Who's going to lead the discussion today? I'm sure it's going to do something about delayed planting and wet weather.
Yeah, so there's guys that are talking about it, and we're really way too early to be talking about delayed planting. I mean, at the time of filming, it's May 3rd. So, but what has guys a little bit nervous is there's at least another week of wet weather here locally, and we've been wet, so it's going to take a little bit of time to dry things out. And I was talking to a farmer yesterday, and he was talking to a couple neighbors about, well, maybe we need to start thinking about switching corn varieties. Corn hybrids, to go a little bit earlier, so our harvest schedule is on time. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to share a couple of the tools that I use once we get to that point and kind of ease guys' concerns. And if we talk about it right now, maybe we can ward off the fact that it might not happen in reality. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to pull up. There's two different things that I wanted to look at, I guess, when we talk about delayed planting. A corn plant that is planted after May 1st will typically mature faster. It will reach black layer faster than the date based on GDUs accumulated that from like what's published. So like our 2415C has a black layer GDU accumulation of 2,718 GDUs to get it to black layer. So
I've always understood that the corn plant drops a leaf. In other words, it produces like one less leaf, which that takes so many degree days or heat units to produce. So that's how it catches up.
Yep.
It cuts the corner a little bit. In other words, you say, hey, I'm sensing that I need to hurry up a little bit, so I'll just drop this one leaf, one of these bottom leaves off.
Yep. So basically, it senses that. So there's one way. The Purdue has, if you we'll put all the links in the comment section. But if you Google like adjusted GDU for late planted corn, it'll come up with this Purdue website, and they got this calculator here. So you scroll down to the bottom here, and it will actually show you. So if I have my 2415C that has 2,718 growing degree units to get it to black layer, and my expected planting date is May 15th, or let's even change this. Let's say we're later than that. So every day past May 1st is the date that you would plug in. Let's say we're not in the field till the 20th of May. What does it actually take to get that plant to black layer? And it rolls in at a 2582. So what is from 2718 to 2582? In our book and how we rate our products, that would take that product down to something that's more equivalent to our 2411C-30 is actually 2572. So real close to what like 111 day would be. So if we're planting on May 20th, it's actually like we'd be planting 111 day from what you were talking about, that corn skipping a growth stage, putting that ear one less ear down, or one less leaf growing, one less leaf down. So that's the first thing that I wanted to show you. If you're nervous about it, you can plug your own hybrid in and look how that number is going to come out from that corn plant hurrying itself along. The next thing that I wanted to do is if you would go to useful to usable, if you look up my GeoHub corn growing degree unit tool, it's going to pull up a map, and it can find whatever county you're in, and you can create a GDU graph on where you're at, and you can plug in the day that you're planting here. And like for what we have plugged in right now, that's May. Let's say we use that same example of May 20th. You plug in the amount of GDUs. The 2414C had that 2718. So there we just plug in a few more GDUs to customize the actual product that we're using, and it prints off a chart of what the averages look like for when that plant is going to hit silking and when that plant is going to hit black layer, and what the different freeze ranges. Like the earliest frost that this tool is using for Lee County, Iowa has October 8th as the earliest frost on record, and then the average frost date is November 3rd. Obviously, with this 115 day, with a May 20th planting date, we're still going to make it without any risk. I mean, with very, very little risk of being frosted before that black layer.
I've always heard the reason why you early up is primarily for dry down. In other words, you're just going to have drier corn in the fall. It's not for yield, because as you early up, generally speaking, you give up yield.
Right. So Virgil Schmidt was actually, who's with Iowa State, he's an extension guy with us, and he's the one that showed us these tools in 2019 when we really did. We were in the month of June, and we were planting corn. So he actually used both of these in conjunction with each other, because if you go back to the first adjustment that's made, that 2582, and you actually plug that 2582 into this number now, it gets you even earlier for when you would actually hit black layer. So now we're at September 14th compared to whatever date that was before. So two really good tools. If you're nervous about things, these are the two tools that I always go to for earlying up. Again, we're talking about this. I'm not worried about anything at this point in time, but if you're one of those guys that gets nervous about things, these are some tools that you can use and plug in the exact product that you have and figure out when your black layer is going to hit, and use your exact geography, and it'll kind of get you more narrowed down on when things are going to happen and what the risk looks like.
Always remember, most of the problems that we have in life exist in our brain, not in reality. So many of us are worried about things that right now don't exist. And the main thing is, stay to your plan. Stay to your plan, because Mother Nature has a way to adjust things and make things work out. And Turk and I can remember this real well. In 1988, we had all the corn planted in April, and of course it didn't rain till mid-August. Corn made 25, beans made 45 to 50. So it's not the weather, not the calendar, not the date that you plant on. It's the weather after you plant. And we've seen years where we planted June 15th, June 20th, and still had tremendous crops. Mm-hmm. Because some Mother Nature adjusted that fall, and gave us a nice fall, gave us timely rains. We had a great year, because usually when you have a wet year, if the rain keeps coming, the crop keeps growing too. So
it was 2019, wasn't it, that we had late planting and great crops?
Yes. Yep. I mean, you had some June planted stuff that year that turned out just fine.
Yep.
So. Yeah, these are just tools. Like I said, if we talk about it now, it's not going to happen in the future, so we might as well get it
out of the way.
Yep, and as we are waiting for things to dry off, pushing the ground fitness, you really want to make sure that ground is absolutely fit when we are this late, because if it does turn off hot and dry, especially with corn, you do not want mohawked roots.
Correct.
So if the switch or the faucet shuts off, you really want everything that corn plant can do. You want as big of a root system on it as possible. So by pushing things too early, at this point in time, I am really focused on getting that perfect stand in the perfect soil environment, because if it does turn off, we're going to need that to produce the best crop that we possibly can.
And I was looking at some weather data that was posted this week, and they said statistically May is our wettest month. In other words, all the months after that are drier. So we're fighting what's normal. May is our wettest month, so we'll get through it. We always do.
And to your point on the fitness of the soil too, when you're talking about planting depth as well, is we're getting a little bit nervous and talking about guys shallowing it up a little bit, but it's very important on corn that we make sure. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead for a margin of error and say 2 inches, because we want those crown roots to be able to be under the surface of the soil. So don't pull it back too far to where you're going to set that up above ground and we lose all standability. And then any root, I mean, we can't have root interception when it's above ground. So that 2 inch minimum is probably still a recommendation, just to make sure we have a 1/4 inch of a little bit of a standard deviation there, because not all planters are perfect and there's a little bit of variability. So that's extremely important. On beans, probably going to, once we get going, we'll probably go from 1.5 inches to 1 inch now, because the temperature of our soil is to the point where we're fine from that standpoint. And then we want those beans up and out of the ground just a little bit quicker. So I'm moving from 1.5 inches to 1 inch, but on corn, I mean, to be honest with you, me personally, I'm probably still going to keep the planter at 2.5, just to make sure that we're going there, because we're going to have the growing degree units. We have the soil temperature and the soil moisture. That stuff's going to fly out of ground 5 to 7 days, the way that the forecast looks. So it's more important to me to make sure that has, to your point, a good root structure and the ability to withstand potential for some adverse weather, whether that be storms in July or dry weather in August, that we have that powerhouse built correctly so we can withstand that variability. Because we've seen it. I mean, the last 3 years we're kind of in a pattern where it's wet and then we turn off kind of hot and dry, and then we come back a little bit wet toward the end of August. So, I think this a little bit might be a blessing for beans. Locally, we've been planting super early, and some of our 3.6, 3.7 varieties maybe haven't had that top end yield that we saw from years before because we haven't caught that timely rain in August, and now we're pushing it back just a little bit. So if those mid-August rains that we caught before were either right at senescence or starting senescence, we're going to be able to use that to actually benefit the seed size versus just trying to keep the plant alive.
And if you want to diversify a little bit, plant more wheat. I mean, particularly on your marginal ground, so you kind of take some of that load off and pressure on to try to get this all planted in a short time. So we got more and more farmers starting to look at these newer varieties that we're offering and going that route. So that much less work to do in the spring.
And our wheat this year looks terrible, just awful.
Awful good.
Yes. Yep.
Awful good. For everywhere, all the pictures that I've seen from the sales managers, our entire territory looks like we're set up for a bumper crop when it comes to wheat. So that's one thing that we're talking about from a delayed planting standpoint. The other thing that I had is the late spring nitrate test. I've had some guys call in and talk to us about what is this water doing to the nitrogen that I already have out in the field. And my standard answer is I have no idea unless you test. So once we get the crop in the ground, and we'll talk about this again once we get our nitrate tester calibrated and out, but late spring nitrate test is the only way that I can make a recommendation to the grower on how much nitrogen was potentially lost and what's in the bank moving forward. Because what we have to do is we have to take our standard foot soil sample, then sometimes we even go down to the next foot to see how much of that nitrogen has moved down into the profile and how much we have to move forward. One thing that I just wanted to highlight, and we'll go into this in depth further coming up, but in coming weeks, but the Iowa State late spring nitrate test, and this part here is key, is they use 25 parts per million nitrate as their standard. And if you have 20% more rainfall than what is average, they lower that number, that critical margin to 20 to 22. So if you have less than the critical parts per million number, they want you to add more nitrogen to it. So it gives you that buffer basically. So when we get to that point, we'll definitely start looking at how much nitrate's out in the soil and how much we have potentially lost, because where we are at currently sitting here, I just pulled up the Snodgrass's chart, and 10.5 inches is where we would normally be at an average for how much rain we've accumulated up to this point, and we are at 17 inches. So, and this is the whole year going forward, but the Iowa State starts their date on April 1st, so we'd have to do a little bit of math on how much rain we've had, but I would say we're definitely more than 20% of average rainfall.
Solid figure, I think for southeast Iowa, it's the third wettest April that we've had in the last 132 years.
Yep. And not everybody's that way.
Correct.
But there are pockets out here that are experiencing more rain than what they would like at this point. So those are a couple of things that guys have called in and quizzed me about this week.
That's good. That's all good information.
And I think, you're exactly right. We can't really even make an inference until the data's in front of us to look at. So, the rules of thumb, 20%, I mean, it could be field by field variance, it could be in-field variance depending on, what kind of your soil types, your what kind of rate you use, what kind of product you use. If you're using dry urea, manure, anhydrous, there's just a lot of variables that go into it. So to be scientific with it, if you're thinking that you need to do a side dress or a top dress, just do some nitrate sampling and make sure that you have the best available data to make that decision.
Right, because volatilization and denitrification are extremely dependent on temperature and soil type. So, yeah. Well, we will definitely dive into that once we get into the side dress season, but those are, like I said, those are some of the things that guys were quizzing us on.
We're early enough that, it's about like the planting talk we're having, that this really doesn't matter right now. The corn plants in its younger stages doesn't really require a lot of nitrogen to get going, but if we keep the weather patterns that we're having and the crops that are in early, we're going to develop pretty quickly. So it's something that, don't forget about it. Make sure that you're keeping it on your radar. But right now, it's not critical to the plant to make sure that we're keeping the steps moving forward to establish really high yields.
Turk, for every negative, there's a positive, isn't there? There's a flip side, right?
We have some positive news in the markets this week. Corn and soybeans have been kind of following wheat's lead and moving higher, and a few factors. The wet weather we're talking about is got the shorts nervous. The weather in South America, the flooding in Rio Grande do Sul had 14 inches of rain with 25% of the harvest still out. And so that's kind of got the trade nervous on when it comes to soybeans. And about a month ago, those rains were in Argentina, and we were talking about delayed harvest in Argentina. So it's working north, that wet weather, and it seems like it's got all the way up here to us right now. But anyway, corn and soybeans are both kind of trending higher, which again I talked about last week about a lot of corn in the bin yet, a lot of corn to be priced yet, and we're setting ourselves up for a bumper crop. And so if we do have that bumper crop, we probably won't have these prices that we're talking about right now. So get a price in mind and get some numbers put in place with your marketer on when you want to pull that trigger, Ben. And
easier said than done.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
But again, you got to have a price in mind, and it could get here pretty quick, and it could go away pretty quick if everything turns around. And in a week from now, forecast looks beautiful, and this crop will be in the ground by the May 15th, and we're off to the races. And so everything can happen really quick, but you just got to be thinking about it. Don't forget about the marketing side of this. The other thing I had, Joe, was the dicamba cutoff dates are something to be considered. Again, in Illinois, in the state of Illinois, the cutoff date is June 12th for spring, but the one that's imminent right now is May 13th is the last day that you can actually take possession of any dicamba. If you don't have it in your shed by May 13th, you're not going to be able to buy it. So that's a big date. Make sure you get your product purchased and in your shed by May 13th. Then you can go ahead and spray it under the normal rules that we had last year, which again, June 12th in Illinois, and it's longer in other states, but again, May 13th is for everybody.
Didn't know that. Yeah. That's a good tip.
So, and then they also make sure that everybody has their training certificates. It sounds like on dicamba that has to have that certificate before you spray, and it sounds like they're going to be looking hard at those enforcements this year on do you have that or not. It's a $750 fine if you don't have that training and you sprayed. So, kind of a big deal.
Yep.
We also had the GREET announcement this week. Again, it's kind of a non-event as far as I'm concerned. The announcement was for 40B, which ends the end of this year, December 31st of 24. So it really nobody is going to qualify for anything that they said. So, but they did give us some guidance on what's possibly coming for 45Z, which goes into effect on January 1st of 25. So, but again, it's only for sustainable aviation fuels, which the 45Z I guess is for actually carbon
ethanol
sequestration in ethanol. So, but there's still a lot. It's so vague. You have to qualify for 3 different things. You got to have cover crops, you got to have no-till or strip-till, and then you have to have an enhanced fertility program. And what does that mean? In my mind, strip till is enhanced fertility program, but there's no guidance on that.
Right. There's a lot of things they got to figure out
Yep.
before.
And
a lot of
to,
questions.
yeah, and to your point, that's just for the sustainable aviation fuel, which
Right.
I'm guessing for most of our viewers, you know, the end market for that, we probably, you know, we have ethanol plants and all that, but the actual sustainable aviation fuel, those plants, I'd have to go look at a map to figure out where it's at. But for most folks, it's not
There's
probably.
one in California, there's one in Louisiana or someplace that it's the only two that's actually doing it.
There's some being constructed or being thought to be
Right,
constructed.
correct.
So it's coming.
Yep, it's coming, but it's not here yet.
Yep.
So that's all I had.
Well, you ready for this?
Let's do it.
I warned you last week I was going to talk about hippos and snails, okay? All right, we'll see what we can do here. But before I go into that, I don't know if you saw the commotion last night in West Point. There was sirens, there was lights, no protests, nothing like that. 2 trees got arrested. They heard they were doing some shady business.
Nope, missed that one.
Okay. All right, let's get to the really bad ones, okay? Hippo 1 says to Hippo 2, "You look like you're gaining weight." Hippo 2 says, "That's very hypocritical of you to say that." Okay. What do you call a hippo with one leg? A hoppo. A hoppo. Okay, okay. All right. All right, now the really, really good ones, okay? Did you hear about the racing snail who got rid of his shell? He thought it would make him faster, but it just made him sluggish. It just made him sluggish. No, okay, all right. This one here I kind of like, okay? I'm starting to laugh already. What did the snail say while he was riding on the turtle's back? What did the snail say while he was riding on the turtle's back? Whee! All right, well, hopefully it made you smile a little bit. But anyhow, we sincerely appreciate your business, and I'll head to church this weekend to pray for some drier weather so we can get things planted, and we hope your family's healthy and safe, and we'll see you next week.